Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to another episode of Blind Date. On this episode, I'm talking with Alexa. She's a designer. She's a product designer working in Zendesk in San Francisco. She also has a YouTube channel, so you might want to check her channel in the description link below. We're talking about design internship, something that I'm very passionate about. I did a design internship in Mexico back when I was in school. She did actually 3 design internships. We're talking about the stories behind that, what we learned, how we got into there. So really great conversation. Enjoy. Hey Alexa, what's up?
Hey.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for much for coming. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's 10 p.m. So, but I'm super energized right now. So
10 p.m. in San Francisco.
Yeah.
8 p.m. in Israel time. So it's like I'm in the future and it's a beautiful day here.
Oh, good. So that means tomorrow will be a beautiful day in San Francisco.
Exactly. So Alexa, I just really recently discovered your YouTube channel and I was actually blown away. First of all, I discovered the kind of day in the life, I guess, in San Francisco, that type of video, which kind of blew up, I guess.
It did, yeah.
These kind of videos, really work well now. But you have some really great content and you're working in Zendesk, right?
Yes, correct.
Which is a kind of big tech company in San Francisco, and you're sharing a lot of amazing value. And so what I wanted to discuss today is internships, design internships. You have a video about that. You've mentioned that you did 3 internships right out of school. I did an internship myself, where I actually flew to Mexico for a few months,
cool.
Which was pretty fun. So I wanted to discuss that and hear really the stories, how you got the internships, what you took away from them, and hopefully encourage other people to do that as well and try to help them, progress that way.
Absolutely. I love talking about internships and helping other people get them. So this is perfect.
Amazing. So can you give context? I think I saw that you've mentioned that the first internship you got kind of at the job fair at school. So I think it would be interesting to hear a little bit about your school experience. Why did you choose to go to design school, and what was that like before doing an internship?
Yeah, sounds great. So I grew up in Wisconsin, which is in the middle of the United States, sort of towards Canada, and I guess the short story is I went to a public school in Wisconsin originally to play college basketball. And so that's why I ended up at this state school in northern Wisconsin. In high school, I remember not doing the test taking, all the math and science classes where you had to memorize facts. That didn't work really well for me. And I was always more project minded. And I really liked the art classes and yearbook club and stuff like that. And so when I was going to college, I was going to go play basketball, and then I was also interested, or I had discovered graphic design. So I went there to do that. And the short story is it totally didn't work out. And I had this great opportunity to move out to San Francisco and go to a design school, which was recommended to me by my dad, who's also a designer and also happened to live in the Bay Area out here. And so I had this really cool opportunity to sort of start over. And so
Wait, can you explain what didn't work out and how you why moved to specifically San Francisco or Bay Area? Because your father was there, or?
Yeah. So basically I went there to play basketball mostly. That's how I ended up out there. And it was in a small town in northern Wisconsin, which I grew up in a city. I grew up in Milwaukee. And so I think being in that small town was one of the factors. It didn't really resonate with that lifestyle. I happened to switch majors while I was there, and I switched into this major that really wasn't what I was looking for. And then basketball was totally not working out for me. It had gotten to the point where I was starting not to love the game. It was really hard for me because I really identified with basketball, and I still do today in so many ways, and how I apply what I've learned from basketball to my life and to design, and that's a whole other thing we can discuss. But it was hard for me because I identified with it so much, and I had to quit in order to leave, and I never thought I would have quit basketball, like college basketball, like that was my thing. But ultimately it was the right decision for me, and I had to do it in order to restart and just focus on my career. And so it's funny, like a lot of people I think who are interested in moving to San Francisco do so very purposefully. And for me, it was just kind of like this moment where I wanted to reset. And my dad was out in the Bay Area, and he had told me if I wanted to actually do design professionally, you should go to design school. And so I think like if he had lived in, I don't know, on the East Coast, maybe I would have tried to go to RISD. If he lived in Southern California, maybe I would have tried to go to one of the schools down there. But he was in the Bay Area, and I was like, all right, I can go out to San Francisco because I got family there. And it was absolutely life-changing. I had no idea what was going on out here at the time. I was 20, about to turn 21. And so I think that was like a very important, like moving out here in my early 20s was a very significant, just like life-changing moment for me. And going to design school was also just very energizing. And so I guess I can kind of transition into a little bit how I discovered UX design, if you think that would be a good
cool.
to discuss that.
You said so. But what's interesting is you said you moved there. Were you already thinking about design as a career in that point? Were you already like, that's what I want to do?
I'm not sure. Like I knew I had words to describe what graphic design was, I think. Like I had discovered that, and I was taking, I had taken like intro level graphic design, not even, like I had taken the art classes that you need to take in order to start your graphic design studio classes at the public school I attended. So that was like art history, 2D design, drawing, 3D, like all those things. And I knew that I liked that just purely because it was hands-on and because it was project-based. I wouldn't even consider myself a really good like artist necessarily. I'm not very good. I wouldn't consider myself like really good at drawing or illustration or even interested in it that necessarily, but I liked this like hands-on, like it was tangible. And so when I transferred out to go to design school, I decided to transfer into the graphic design program. I think mostly because I was familiar with it from my last school, and probably just from what I read. I don't know. It was like such a long time ago. And I actually had considered applying for the interaction design program at the college too, which was a very new program. I think when I got there, they hadn't graduated a class yet. So by the time that I graduated, they had graduated too. But I would have been one of those very first classes. And so I don't know. I decided to stick with graphic design. And I'm still actually really glad that I did, because I've been able to apply a lot of my graphic design skills into like the digital medium, like the digital space. And there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the fundamentals. Like you can't, like if you don't have the fundamentals, it's really hard to apply, good UX without having it. So you've moved into kind of graphic design, and over there you discovered kind of like the UX part of things, or like the design for digital products.
Yeah.
And you've also mentioned that your father is a designer, like digital product designer or a designer of chairs. Yeah,
no, we do the same thing essentially. He's obviously got way more experience than me. Yeah, it's pretty wild actually. The VP of product design at Zendesk, her name is Kim Lennox. Her and I have talked about this a bit. She's like, there's this like new generation of designers who have parents who are designers. Like that's new. Like we got to talk about that. And I was like, yeah, I would be down to be on that panel. That's so interesting. But it's true. My dad is also a product designer, and has been a product designer for quite a while now. And he had moved out to the Bay Area to be a designer like around the like .com boom. So it was a very different product design or interaction design or whatever we were calling it back then. It was very different than it is today, obviously. But
were you kind of aware of what he was doing like as a job and saying, hey, that's cool, maybe I want to do that? Or you were like, nothing to do with that?
Yeah. So this is the funny thing. Like, I really think I discovered it on my own, which I really appreciate. He kind of just gave me that space. So he, he wasn't like, Lex, you should be a designer, you should do UX design. It was really like I discovered it. And then once I realized what it was, and I also realized my dad was doing it, then it was like, oh, I can really go to him for a lot of advice and mentorship. And I was really grateful for that, because I think there's a lot of things that you can't get in the classroom, and you really have to just kind of like fill in the gaps with other people that you meet outside of school or outside of wherever you're learning in order to get that information. And a lot of what I talk about on my YouTube channel still today is advice that my dad gave me back when I was in school. And so I think also because we had that relationship, and it meant so much to me, and it's like how I ended up getting an internship earlier on at my time at school, and like a lot of portfolio stuff, like a lot of these things, like I really didn't get from school, I got from my dad. And so I want to share that with other people so that they can also like figure that out and hopefully get those jobs or do what they need to do to progress in their career faster.
That's incredible. You're very lucky in that sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how long was that school? Was that like 3-4 years type of program?
Yeah, so technically the graphic design program, I went to California College of the Arts. It's in San Francisco. It's a 4-year program, but I transferred. So I did 2 years in public school in Wisconsin, and I was able to transfer my some of my credits. And so I ended up spending 2.5 years at CCA.
Okay. And where you discovered you kind of want to major in UX and product design? Yeah,
okay. So in the graphic design program, and this was like, I went there in 2012, going into 2013. So it was my second semester, like 2013, that I was taking an intro into interaction design class as a part of the graphic design program. So that was the class that I figured out like what UX design was, and that it was what I wanted to do. Even though like my dad was doing it and I was now living out here where he was working professionally as a product designer, he was working at big tech companies, and I had visited before. Like he was a director of design at Twitter. And so I'd visited Twitter like when they were building up a team, and still like I didn't realize what they were doing. So it was in that class that I figured it out. And it was a class that I had, it was the 4th class of the day. And in design school, the studio classes are all 3 hours long. And so I had 4 of those on this day that I had my interaction intro class. And it was like a night class. So it was like 7 to 10 p.m. It was like super late. And I remember just being so excited every time I would go to that class that even though it was like night, I was super energized. I didn't want it to end. And like, even so energized that I would like go home and I'd keep working on it, because this is like, it was what I wanted to be doing. And so I'd work on into the night. And so I don't know, I think like when you find that energy, when you find something that gives you that energy, you just know like that's what you're supposed to be doing. And so I just took that and like kept going.
That's amazing. Sounds like a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like you're very passionate about school. So how do you feel about that kind of like old debate about whether designers should go to school? Now there's a lot of online programs you can learn with YouTube, with boot camps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was like the thing that you most took away from school that you think it was, if you think it was worth your time, your money, or everything?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. And I'm a huge advocate for design school because I had such a great experience. I know it's not for everyone, and especially if people are transitioning their careers, it can be, it may not be right for someone to go back and do an undergraduate degree, maybe a master's, but it's, there's a lot of factors that would have to be taken into consideration to do something like that. But I'm a huge advocate for design school, and it's for a couple of reasons. I think the main ones are just purely the amount of time that you're going to spend working through and like learning the fundamentals of design is just not something you're going to get with a boot camp. Boot camps like are designed to be fast, and most of the ones that I'm aware of at least are like 2 months or something like that. There's a couple that are a bit longer, but like they're kind of designed to be like fit everything into a fast period of time. And I think that people expect that it may just take 2 months to learn design, and that's just not the case. There's a lot of repetition required for you to like really understand the processes and get that right. And so I'm not like I think boot camps are really great for many reasons as well, but I just think that the expectation is not aligned often, or at least with people I've talked to. And so design school one of the main reasons I think it's great is because you're spending day in and day out, you're there, you're spending a lot of time, you're surrounded by other designers and people who are doing that same thing that you are. Like you have teachers who are, at least at CCA, for example, most of the teachers who teach there are also working professionals. And so they're also like, they're super, like their information, what they're teaching is super relevant. And so that's one of the main reasons. And then second, which is sort of similar or aligned, is that something I really got out of design school was the critique culture, which is at just about every other class period, we would have design critique, which is collecting feedback of what's working and what's not working about your designs. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's really important, yeah. And you have to be able to not personalize feedback and really like.
Did you cry?
I have one story actually where I cried during like a critique, but it was not because because of the work. It was because I personalized something else. That's for another story.
In my school, it was very common for people to cry.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? So it's like, I think there's a really big difference between art and design, and a lot of the main reason is that design has to be objective. There has to be a reason why something works or doesn't work, and we have to be able to talk about that. And so it's not like someone's criticizing, or critiquing really your work. It's they're trying to help you solve the problem. And this is really hard to get right. And so design school really, really set me up for this. Like I said, we did it all the time. And I think critique also in general just has helped me in life, because I think that's now how I approach solving my personal problems too.
That's amazing. I think it's very mature. I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of the people that I went to school with, they found it hard. They were like, I spent the whole night working on this. It's my baby. How can you tell me that it's not working? Like, asshole. You're just trying to humiliate me. I'm like, dude, I'm trying to help you here. No. It's really hard. It's really hard. But it's true that if it's a good practice, because your whole working life as a designer, you're going to get feedback. And people are not just going to try to be nice to you. They're going to, if you want to do the best work, it's going to require iterations, revisions, feedback. Nobody gets it right the first time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always a work in progress.
Okay. So how did you get into the internship, or why do you thought that was necessary? How did that came to happen?
Yeah. So like I said, my dad was a huge influence on me once I had moved out here to San Francisco. And so prior to moving out here, I think I spent the summers coaching basketball, which was great. And it wasn't like I was making a lot of money doing that either, but it was like, what do I do during the summer? I'll coach basketball. Like that's what I was doing back home. And so now I lived in San Francisco. I had done, like a semester, almost 2 semesters, or I was like halfway through the second semester at CCA. And my dad was like, what are you going to do this summer? Like, you should probably try to get an internship, like practice your design skills during the summer. And I don't know why I hadn't thought about that on my own, but like him telling me that and really encouraging me to find somewhere to work and like keep practicing this thing that I was already like super excited about just made a lot of sense. And so I had transferred into the program, and I happened to be sort of in between like a sophomore and a junior, which is like a second to third level college student. So a lot of people in my class hadn't thought about internships yet either, because it wasn't a requirement at that stage in our like schooling. And so I was one of the only people in my class that ended up going to this career fair. But that's where I ended up getting the job. And I had 2 projects, from what I remember, 2 or 3 that I had put together from that intro class that I took within the graphic design program. And I didn't have a website up, like I didn't know how to do any of that. But I had the projects, and I had them in this like PDF, like presentable format. And so I brought that with me, like with my computer, and like showed it to the different people, like the different companies that I was interested in at the career fair. And like, that's how I guess like made an impression, or tried to like get to know some potential employers. And ultimately that's what led me to get my first UX design job.
What was that? Who were you interning for?
Yeah. So my first internship was at a startup. It was called Room 77, and it was really small. I don't know,
But
third.
by the way, just out of curiosity, are those like paid internships? Because I know that a lot of them are kind of like non-paid, or so I'm not sure how it'll work.
Yeah. I don't know how it works outside of San Francisco, but I think as far as I know and as far as what I'd advise is like people should always be looking for paid internships. That's like
Right.
you're providing value to the company. Like you're doing work, so you should be paid and compensated fairly for that. And also like not only it's like it's an exchange in value. So I think people also take work a lot more seriously when they're getting paid anyways. And so I know there's a little bit of nuance to that. And if you're having a hard time finding an internship, doing like volunteered work could be a good avenue. And I think you actually made a post about this recently, from what I remember. So there is nuance, but the internship that I took was paid. And I was definitely looking for a paid job for the summer, something I could use to start creating, creating some sort of savings or like money that I could use during the school year because I was super broke and design school is very expensive. And so yeah, I think it's pretty standard out here in San Francisco, but I'm not sure what it's like elsewhere.
And what was the structure of the internship like? Were there other designers there teaching you, or because startups, sometimes they don't have other designers in-house?
Yeah. So there was one other designer, and she was also a CCA alum, or I guess I was a student at the time. So she was a CCA alum, and that's sort of how she ended up at the career fair. And so she hired me. But during the internship, it must have been like a 3 or 4 month internship. And about like a month into me working there, she ended up having to leave for like personal, like medical related reasons. And so I ended up being the only designer there for a majority of my internship. Yeah. Which was not like the experience I was really looking for, but it ended up still being a really great experience. And I did still have like her as a connection, and we're still really good friends. And I'm still so grateful for her for giving me my first design job, because I look back at that work and I'm just like, whoa, like that wasn't that great. And I know times have changed, but like, whoa. And so I ended up being the only designer at the startup, and I created a lot of really good connections there. And ultimately, I ended up becoming really
What type
close.
of work did you do there? Was that like kind of full stack startup, everything you need type of work?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I call myself a product designer now. I don't know what I called myself at the time back then, but like very much a generalist in that you're really seeing the design all the way from like the problem and needing to ideate and brainstorm on the solution to designing it, collecting feedback, prototyping, and working with engineering to implement. And it was such a small team, and I think there was a lot of overlaps, especially with the product people. I remember just like lots of feedback happening all the time, but ultimately I was the one creating that vision, right? And so...
Was that the first ever real project that you were working on? You did not do, I don't know, freelance or something like that before?
Yeah, no, that was definitely my first design job. Yeah.
So what was that like? Like the experience of actually working on a real problem with clients, with feedback. What was that like?
I mean, again, it's been so long, but I just remember it being super energizing. And I was working at such a small company, and I remember feeling so close with everyone. I don't really think I knew what everyone did, but like at least now compared to what I know now about how business works. But it was just like we felt like a family, and I was really creating something real that we would, we'd see go live on the website, and like what an accomplishment. And so that just fueled the fire even more. I know it because I went back to CCA and it was like, this is what I want to do. I know I'm in this graphic design program, but like, this is it. Like I'm going to keep doing this. And I was able to actually shape a lot of my projects within my graphic design program to be in the medium I wanted it to be, which was really cool too. And so I was able to still get a lot of that like fundamental graphic design skills while also practicing what I wanted to do, that I knew what I wanted to do outside of school.
You said you made a really good connections over there.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Okay.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm actually still in touch with a lot of people that I worked with at that company, but there was this one guy in particular who was the VP of product at the startup. And he really believed in me. I think we just really connected, and he really enjoyed working with me. I enjoyed working with him. And I was actually supposed to I was supposed to work at the startup during the school year. Like it was like they wanted to keep working with me. And that was great because I was like, oh, I could do part-time during school, and again, like make some money, really practice my skills, do real world work. And then like weeks later, after we talked about this, the company's like engineering team got bought by Google or something like that. So like the company was not going to exist soon. And so it was like, oh, now we can't offer you this. But he really believed in me, and he really wanted to help me out. And so he helped connect me with another startup in the travel industry for a job during the school year. And so I worked with them. It was just 1 day a week, 8 hours, because I had Fridays off from school, and I would just go in and work with them every Friday. And so that was also like a really good experience. And that team was even smaller. But I was doing design work, and And
you were also single designer over there, the only designers.
Yeah, I was. And eventually they hired a full-time designer, and I worked with him for a bit too. I want to say during like the next semester. So I did get to work closely with another like full-time senior designer. But when I first started there, it was just me. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So you got a 3-4 months summer internship that rolled over into kind of a part-time job.
Yes.
Sounds incredible.
Yes. And the story is not over, because that same person who connected me with this job during the school year was also helped connect me with the second summer internship that I got, which was at Yelp. So he was friends with the VP of product at Yelp. And apparently, they got together, I don't know, to grab beers or to catch up. And he had mentioned me as someone who would be potentially good for an internship. And so Yelp reached out to me. And this was now it was like a year later. I remember this was like maybe a week or so after the career fair, which I'd done it again. I was like in contact with some companies. I was hustling on that. And then I get this email from Yelp.
Just to understand, the next year you went again to a career fair.
Yeah, same career fair, but a year later.
Can you explain why would you want another internship or?
Yeah, I think.
And this is not after the school is gone, right? You still have another year later.
Yep. I had 2.5 years there. So I still had at that point another
year to go.
Yeah.
So you were looking for another summer job, basically.
Yes. And like, I think it's really important when you're in school to get as many internships as possible. Like it looks a bit weird when you're actually like a working professional to be hopping around companies. It's like, why can't Alexa sit still? Why is she switching companies all the time? Because like that can actually often does raise flags. And if you are doing something like that, you really have to have good reasons as to why you're doing it. Otherwise, people want people who can actually like stick to a problem and continue to solve it. So, but that's not the case when you're a student. Like actually it looks really good. Like you've gotten a lot of different experience from different types of companies. And so I like, even if you had like a really good experience at an internship, like maybe you got a good internship at a big tech company and they like offered you to come back. Like I would almost like, usually what I would tell people who come to me with that question is I wouldn't advise you to do that same internship. Like you should go and try something else. Try a different industry, try a different size company, try something else, because when you're a student, like you really want to just be like taking things in and really getting a like diverse perspective on how stuff works so you can figure out what's best for you. The internship's not only like a great opportunity for like companies to potentially like check if like this is like if you're a good person for them to bring on their team, because often internships are intent to hire, not all the time, but sometimes they are. Not only is it good for the companies, but it's good for you. Like you want to make sure that you're noticing what works for you, and the only way you can really do that is to like get a breadth of experience. So I wanted to do that. I was like I need to try other things out.
Amazing. All right. So you were mentioning, so you were looking for the next job, and then while that was happening, he recommended you to the VP product of Yelp. And so he reached out to you, or what was that like?
Yeah, well, the recruiter reached out to me, and that's what she told me. She was like, "Hey, we gotta, like, so and so." She basically told me the story in the email, and I was like, "Whoa, like, yes, I would love to. I would love to interview with you." I'm like, I was in the final stages with another company, and so I had to explain that to her, to the recruiter. And she was like, "Yeah, no problem. Like, this is our process. Like, let's do it. Let's try to like work through it really fast." And so I did. I like the whole interview process, I think I did in a week. And it was like a design challenge. It was a handful of interviews, like calls, and then more calls after the design. It was like, it was a whole interview process, but we fit it into a week. And so
let's can we dig into that before we roll over? I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you share kind of like what was the design challenge, or what was some of that?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't quite remember what the challenge was, but they gave me a prompt. And I think design challenges are actually really good for students. There's a conversation, at least in the San Francisco Bay Area, about like design challenges being like maybe not a great thing for people to do, but I actually think it's a bit different for like mid-level to senior level designers versus students. Like receiving a challenge is actually a really objective way that companies can evaluate your process and your design work across like other students, for example. So,
and it's a challenge that you do at home, right? You don't come to their office or something.
Correct. Yes. So it's like a take-home exercise. They usually advise you to take a certain amount of time for it. I don't remember the details of it. You're supposed to like create, some sort of like presentable work for it. For internships, it's usually mostly just like through calls. Like you're not often going to go in and meet with them. Usually, sometimes people aren't even in the same state. And so it doesn't make sense for the company to like fly like students out for those types of things. So usually when you like do a take-home exercise, like you may review it with someone over a video conference call, which is what I did. I think like that was probably one of the first interviews that I did. And then after that, there's always some sort of like portfolio review and again, presenting your work and your process to multiple people on the team so they can get a sense of you and your work. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So you try to rush that through a week and then you got it?
Yeah. And then I got it. And I remember being so excited. Like it was Yelp. Like I knew Yelp. I'd used Yelp. This was like a really big opportunity. I still remember like I had a roommate at the time, and I think he was sleeping and so I didn't want to be loud. And so I remember like leaving the apartment into the hallway and like I was on the phone with her while she was like telling me the offer. And I was like being really loud and obnoxious, except for like not like I was on the phone with her. So like my body was just like jumping around and I was like so excited, but I was trying to be calm on the phone because it's just like I did it. And it was cool. Like this, I think she was telling me too, it was like, I wasn't the only design intern. There was 3 others. And there was also like a ton of like other interns there too, like from product managers and engineers. Like this was a big program that I was now a part of. And I was so excited. Yeah.
So that experience was very different in a sense of that's a big company with a big design team, right? What was that like? Or which one did you like better and why?
Man, I had such a good experience at this Yelp internship. And I almost I can't compare it to my Room 77 one at the startup because they were just so different. But it really did feel like an evolution of me in my like design career, my design life, because Yelp was definitely more established. It was a big company. The intern program itself, like I was one intern of like 90 within the engineering and product and design departments. And
90 interns?
Yeah, 90. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, wild. And like they had like a Facebook group for us all to meet before we would join. And it was like they had scheduled events for it. It was like they really wanted to help us build up a community within the intern group. And I'm still really good friends with like the interns that I met there. Like we really did become close. And for the first time, it really allowed me to better understand what other people in the company do, especially engineers, because most of the interns there were engineers. And so that was really cool. And I was working with other designers. And so I was able to really work closely and get a lot of like guidance and mentorship from the designers there that I also think was a really important part of me becoming a professional designer.
Can you remember some of the things that you were like realizing for the first time by working with somebody who's more experienced than you?
Yeah, when you just asked that, like the first thing that popped in my head was learning about grid systems, because
Okay.
I think the very first project that the designer that I worked with most closely at Yelp for my first internship there, his name was Stefan. He gave me this. It was like he gave me a bunch of emails to like review or redesign, and I think we had just maybe switched typography or like something, but I had to use like the grid system, the like baseline grid system to build these out. And I was like, I've never done this before. It makes sense. Like it's all math. Like you want everything to be sort of like divisible.
But you did not
by
learn
3.
about grid systems in school? That's kind of core graphic design.
Yeah.
Thing, no?
I hadn't learned about the baseline grid system. Like,
all right.
Right. Like I think, I don't think I understood what like the 9-column grid or 960 grid was at the time.
Yeah.
Either.
Right.
Like I hadn't, I think I'd learned probably grid systems were more so from a graphic design perspective, but I didn't know what that meant on the web.
Right.
And so it was like sort of those things that, again, you don't necessarily learn in school, at least I hadn't at the time, how to actually like apply that and use that to build out like consistency on the web. And so it was like a really cool, just like intro project. It was like, hey, here, just, like use this file and apply the grid, like this baseline grid system to it, make sure it's all pixel perfect. Like that sort of like the repetition of that was really helpful and very memorable for me. Even I worked with an intern in the fall. She joined my team, which was really exciting. And I remember her like, I remember teaching her our grid system that we use for Zendesk. And it was something that like, I don't know, it just like flashed back to me. I was like, yeah, like you don't necessarily like understand this stuff when you're working on your own projects. So I just thought that was cool.
Cool. Is there anything, like, it's so far from the story, it sounds like a fairy tale, like everything is amazing, you get good opportunities, you move to San Francisco. Was there anything challenging or like that at some point it was really difficult, maybe in the internship itself? I know for me, for my internship, at some point it was very difficult. Well, again, I moved from Israel to Mexico for 4 months, so there were other difficulties just because language and being far from home. But were there anything that was difficult for you during this process?
Yeah. So I always say success comes from a combination of hard work and getting lucky. And I think I did that really well in school. I worked really hard and I was super energized by this UX design stuff. And I got really lucky. I happened to move to San Francisco. I happened to work at this startup where the VP product introduced me to like the Yelp people. Like I had a lot of those moments. And I know, again, it's been a while and I know there were certainly challenges that I was facing during those times. And we could probably poke into that a bit. But the most challenging part for me actually came when I was trying to get my second job. I really struggled with it. So I ended up working at Yelp full time for about 2.5 years after I graduated, and I was ready to leave. I sort of felt like I had hit what I could do growth wise there. And I was also like struggling a bit, I think, with being proud of the work that I had done there. And Yelp, at least at the time, wasn't a very design focused company. And I just came from design school and I was like, where are all the designers? Like, where's the design leadership? Like, none of that was really established. And so I was frustrated. And so, but I was confident. I was like, I still had that energy that I had from when I was in school. And I also had this like big named company on my resume, which it works really well when you're trying to at least even just get interviews, right? So I was getting a lot of interviews and nothing was working out. Like I talked to a lot of companies and I created the spreadsheet and I like did all the like the normal organizational like stuff that I usually do to like really just like kick ass. And it was not working out. And I think
what wasn't working out? What wasn't working out?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't getting job offers basically.
Okay.
I would get like really far in the interview process, and then it was like no, and it was like no, so many times. I've really never felt that defeated, and even just like not confident in myself as a designer. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I think part of it really was I wasn't proud of the work that I had done, or like I wasn't able to. I wasn't able to communicate or present that like my work in a way that didn't come off as like, I don't know, creating excuses probably. And so I think that was part of it. And it's so, I can just tell it's so easy to get stuck in that loop. Even someone like me, really, like I always like go into my work with this attitude of like, I'm the person that you need, that you're going to want to work on this because like, I have like I'm the one, like you're gonna want me. I get stuff done, and even with all of that energy, like it wasn't working out, and so it was hard. And the way that I ended up getting out of it was, besides persevering.
How many interviews are we talking about?
I mean, I could go back and look, but like I remember just like, especially like 3 or 4 where I had gone all the way to the end, like did day-long interviews, and it was just like, no, you're not, we went with someone else. And I think part of it too is I remember feeling so confident in the interviews. Like I had just done so well, like this was the one. And then it just like, we weren't connecting clearly. And so I think it was just like, that really hit me hard. And so, it was really devastating. And I think ultimately, like what helped get me through it was, again, just like this attitude of persevering and like knowing that you just have to like keep pushing forward. If you want something enough, you'll make it happen. You'll figure it out. You'll solve that problem. You'll do the thing different next time. And I think with interviewing, part of what that means is like redesigning and like revamping your presentation. Like the thing that you're going to go into the interview presenting, your portfolio, like the story of you and your work. And so I happened to, and I was meeting with a lot of different people, like telling them this story. I was like so defeated, trying to really connect with other designers to get advice. I remember there was this one woman I ended up meeting with, and I'm not even like super close with her now. I don't even know how much she realizes like she influenced my life so much. But she ended up sharing with me her presentation that she used to get the design job that she was in at the time. And she just sent me that, like she sent me the whole thing, and I reviewed it, and it was almost just like lightning struck. And I was like, oh, this is the thing I'm missing. Like I need to include this, and this in my presentation. And, maybe it was a little bit of just like serendipity, but like the next presentation that I made was the one that I presented to Zendesk. And that's ultimately where I ended up working. And it all worked out in the end, of course. And I love Zendesk. It's an incredible company to work for, especially as a designer. But man, that was really, really hard.
Wow. So like there's a lot of things to unpack here. I think it's really, really interesting. So first of all, I think that, perseverance, like the fact that you persevered is amazing, but also it sounds like you went to get feedback and try to improve every round, which is something that I don't think many people think about. They would try again and again without trying something else, or what, they call in the tech or startup world pivoting, or like, okay, what doesn't work? Let's try to change that. Let's try something else. And going to get feedback and learning from other people, like what worked for them, is really, really smart, I think. So can you share, like, I have no clue what is a presentation, like how would a presentation like that work? Like, so what, for example, was something that you understood from her that you should change? Like, how are those presentations are even structured? I never interviewed for a large company, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, this is, I'm making a video about this right now, about portfolios. And something that I'm noticing, I'm not sure if everyone would necessarily agree, but I think that there's a difference between your online portfolio on your website and your offline portfolio, which I would say is like the presentation, like a PDF or a slides that you're going to use to present your work to a company in person or like over the phone. And so what I'm talking about, the presentation, that's what I'm talking about, like this presentation part. And so
I didn't even know there was a difference, like, or that you should have a difference. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get into this because I've been thinking a lot about it. Like, I think your online portfolio needs to be the short story of you and your work. And the purpose of it is for you to capture the attention of a design recruiter or a hiring manager. It's not necessarily to tell the full story. Like at a big company, like at Yelp or at Zendesk, where we get a lot of applicants, it's not realistic to expect someone to review a full case study, to read through all of that context, to understand the problem and the solution. Like portfolio review is to like get a quick understanding of like how can this person identify a problem and create some sort of way to like a solution to solve for it. Like, can they do that thing? Okay, let's talk to them. Like, I want to get to know this person. They may be able to do this job. And so I usually advise people to like really condense and simplify their online portfolio and then focus on creating that offline portfolio, which is the presentation. And that's where you go into the case study. That's where you have all the details of the research and the different methodologies that you use to understand the human behavior needed in order to design the solution. And so that's sort of how I was thinking about my portfolio back when I was trying to apply for my next job at Zendesk too. So I didn't spend as much time trying to revamp my website as much as I was actually going back and like redoing the presentation I was using to present my portfolio in the interview. And so, I mean, I had like a bunch of different iterations of that, and I would change it every time I would get all the way to the end of an interview and like, I would switch it up. I was like, this clearly isn't working. I got to do something else. And so the woman who sent me her PDF, it was something really obvious that I don't know why I had missed, but it was like just framing the problem and the goal. And I think some of the data points earlier on before I presented the work. And then I was also, like I said, I was kind of not proud of some of the work that I was doing. And so I ended up presenting a project that I was really proud of that was like work in progress. And so I stuck that project in there. And then I also decided to include work that I had done at Yelp to help create structures and systems within our design team. Like I had established a critique culture at Yelp for our design team. I had organized weekly meetings, and like I'd done all this work that was not necessarily like portfolio, physical, like case study projects. But I was like, this is stuff that I'm proud of. Like I got to include this too. And so she had done stuff like that in hers. And so I was just like, I don't know. I was like, I needed to include some of those things. And ultimately that was the presentation that helped me get the job. But I think it's more so, it's just like you said earlier, it's like, you have to go back and fix things up, try something new, like see what's not working about it, and experiment, I guess.
That's incredible. I think you said something that I never thought about, which is super, super interesting, which is, what is the goal of your online portfolio? The goal is to take you to the next step in the funnel. Like if you're trying to get a job, there are steps, right? There's a funnel. First, you need to get they'll see your website, they're going to need to call you. Then you need to move to the next interview. So everything has a purpose. And it kind of reminds me, when you learn copywriting, it's like, what's the purpose of the title? It's to make you read the first paragraph. What's the purpose of the first paragraph? To make you read the whole chapter. So that's really interesting to think about it this way. I never thought about portfolio this way, but it's really, really interesting. And I think I agree with your, when I review other people's portfolios, I sometimes say, I'd love to see how you think. So I'd love to see case studies, but you're very right with the fact that I don't have really time to read a bunch of long case studies. I'm just going to scroll through it really fast. And I'm going to personally talk to the people who are really interesting. to me. One thing that you've mentioned that I was curious about, just because I'm a nerd about those things, is you said the spreadsheet, because you said like that you had a spreadsheet that you worked through. So I was curious about that. Can you talk about the spreadsheet?
Yeah, I mean, when you're applying for jobs, you have to be organized about it. And there's a lot of jobs out there. There's a lot of companies. And so I think it's really important that you're creating a list and you're creating like notes and like different pieces of documentation around that to really make sure you're organized and know like how far along you are with each company, like, any like sort of links or websites or like insights about the leadership there. Just like you have to keep a list. And I actually like to keep a list of companies. I think it's important to keep a list of companies that like are your dream companies, like include those in the list. And then include the companies that you're like moderately interested in, mildly. Maybe there's a company you're just like, you wouldn't want to work there for some reason. Like make sure that you've like documented that somewhere because it can get really out of hand if you're just not organized about it. And especially when you're interviewing, companies can tell if you haven't really looked into what they do. And I think like one of the easiest things that you can do is just learn about the CEO, because I think that the CEO and like their leadership style really says a lot about the company and shows that you're curious and actually interested in the company. And so you have to do that research. And what better way than to create a spreadsheet?
Love it. I had a spreadsheet when I was applying for an internship, because we didn't have kind of a job fair type of thing. And I wanted an internship abroad. So I had to research all the studios where I wanted to apply. Actually, my stats in the spreadsheet was, I think I applied to like 60 studios and I got accepted into 2. So I have 1 in 30 a success rate type of thing. So I always tell people like you need to try a lot of times. And you've also mentioned it, like you passed through some failures to end up with a really, really good place.
Yeah. You have to do a little bit of, I really do believe like some of your most painful experiences are what help you become better, and you have to learn to embrace them and like take them all in, because that's what's ultimately going to help you become that like the better person or like the better designer that you want to be. And you have to view it that way. Otherwise, it'll just eat you alive.
So, talking about internships, do you think that like people who are not in big cities, they're less advantaged, like they have less chance of getting a good internship? Or I think for them, like the investment is much bigger if they have to relocate or travel somewhere. Do you still think it's worth it, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's tough. I think it's already really hard to get internships, and a company really has to be at a good place within their team and within their like organization to provide the right opportunity for new students to come in, or new designers or students to come in, so that they're successful. And so I think companies and studios, we continuously have to be doing a better job of like creating those opportunities and being prepared enough. But right now, there's a lot of students trying to become UX designers, and there's not a lot of internships. And so if you don't live in a place where there are more of these opportunities, yeah, it's going to be a bit harder.
Yeah. And what if you're not a student? What if you're self-taught? Do you think that people that are interviewing care about that? Like it's a way to filter out, or?
I think that the tech industry has been really good about, like if you're the right person to do the job, however you got there, doesn't matter. Like the work shows for it. And I think that's actually what's really great about the design industry, is that because like the entry point in is your portfolio, it's actually a really objective way to evaluate someone at surface level, like can they do the job. And then during the interview, it's your job to just show like who you are and like your unique personality and your voice, and layer that on top of like all of that work you put into it, because it doesn't matter if you went to design school. It doesn't matter if you did a boot camp. Like if you can do the job and like you're the right person for that, and you have the skills, like that's what's most important. And so if you don't live in San Francisco and you're trying to get a job here, like, yeah, you should definitely still apply. You should definitely try to create those connections. Sometimes there are opportunities for those companies to help you relocate. A lot of these big tech companies, Yelp, Facebook, Google, like they also provide living stipends for their students. And yeah, like why would you not try?
I think a lot of people don't even try because they think it's not possible, or there's just no way, or they kind of like, not feeling good enough, which is a problem, I think.
It is. And you get so stuck into that if you tell that to yourself all the time.
Yeah. So it's important to tell people that it's possible and it's worth trying. Are you now in a position where you're actually seeing the interns' portfolios and choosing which one to take or something like that?
Yeah, I think I was actually pretty lucky in that I've done this for a long time, and I did it really early on in my career. I was one of the very first designers that built out this team at Yelp back in like early 2015. And so I did a lot of portfolio reviewing there. And I continue to do it at Zendesk when there's a job specifically within my team. And so I have looked at a lot of portfolios, a lot of students' portfolios, and also mid-level, senior level. They're a little bit different. You have to evaluate them differently. But also just besides professionally doing it for actual hiring purposes, both when I was at Yelp and a lot more earlier on, like last year when I was working at Zendesk, I did a lot of portfolio reviewing just from people who were reaching out to me for feedback. I haven't been able to do that as much lately because I have this YouTube channel and people ask me a lot, and I have had to set boundaries. I'm starting professional coaching actually through Patreon for now, and so I do want to help people with their portfolios, but I think in order to do what I need to do to make videos and like have my own time, I need to set the boundaries, and like I can't do portfolio reviews for everyone because I want to make sure that the feedback I'm providing is personalized and is like thorough enough that will actually help someone. But I did do it, like I practiced that a lot, and I think it was also partly for me to like I wanted to help give back to the design community too. Like people have helped me along the way, provide feedback for me, and so someone reached out to me for help and like they needed feedback. I was like, yeah, I want to help them out. So I did a lot of that too early on.
That sounds really, really incredible and valuable for a lot of people. I know I'm getting tons of requests for portfolio reviews as well. So it's very, very valuable, I think. Awesome, Alexa. It's been really, really awesome catching up with you. Anything else that you want to share, kind of like your future YouTube channel, Patreon, like where to find you, what to look out for you next?
Yeah, well, definitely, go check out my YouTube channel and subscribe if you would like. My YouTube channel's name is Hello, I'm Alexa. And I'm also very active on Instagram. I love Instagram, especially Instagram stories. And so I'm also Hello, I'm Alexa over there. It's hello_I'm Alexa though. But
I guess we'll put on the links below.
Yeah, links down below, exactly. But I just want to say, I've been on YouTube for just over a year, and this is definitely the beginning. I have like documents full of ideas, and I just I work a 9-to-5 job too, so I can't upload as frequently as I'd like. But there's so many videos coming, and I really want to connect with people and help them become the designers they want to be. So I will be doing that for a long time.
Love it. Awesome. And thanks for everything that you do for the community. It's incredible. Thank you, Alexa. Thank you so much for staying up late and chatting with me. It's been a pleasure. If I'm in San Francisco, which is possible later on this year, I'll reach out and we'll do something in person.
I would love that. Sure. Definitely. Perfect.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye. Have a good day. Take care.
Bye-bye.